I'm curious about insights with respect to your own station in the chronological spectrum of the human experience. And I'm wondering what aspects of MacDonald's thoughts encourage you, perhaps give you comfort, add to your faith, but also that could be shared with your generation as they walk in this path that you're upon.
Yes. Yes, it's interesting. It's, for me specifically, it's a very easy connection because I wanted to be a literary scholar, and George MacDonald was a literary scholar. That's one of the things that he did voluminously. Right. He made anthologies of Sydney. He wrote essays on people like Wordsworth and Shakespeare and all of these things. But on a more fundamental level, that lecturing or his preaching comes from this desire to communicate, to take what God has given you and what you have found of God and to share it with others. It's a very generous impulse that one finds in MacDonald, which I think is a good thing for people trying to find their vocation to follow. What do you think is a grace God has given you that would allow you to give to others? And there's that sense of what you would do well, because, you know, I love all the flowery language and things, but MacDonald, there's an earthiness to him as well. There's, like, you know, the kind of mud on your boots kind of earthiness. Whatever you do it well. You think of his character, Malcolm, who's a fairly, you know, who's a wonderful, kind character, but is not the most elevated in that flowery sense. I'm thinking of one scene where he visits the library of a lord and he's delighted by the books that he finds there. And then to bring it back to my authors, sorry.
No, this is great.
This is where all of my mind brings me back to the 16th and 17th centuries. And so he finds John Milton's book, Iconoclastes. And it might be is it Iconoclastes? I believe so. Yes. And so there he finds a text by John Milton. He reads it and he's like, oh, this is delightful. And then he's like, oh, there's a little bit, so Malcolm is in this library reading Iconoclastes. And he finds the section in Iconoclastes where Milton critiques King Charles I for plagiarizing a prayer from Sir Philip Sidney's prose romance, The Countess of Pembroke's Arcadia, where there is a character, a pagan princess, who prays. And it's a very holy prayer, and, you know, the textual history of that is so complicated that I won't get into that because that will only be of interest to early modernists. But Malcolm basically says, oh, what a holy prayer. And then he shows it to the Lord who owns the library, and he says, oh, what's your opinion of this? And then he's like, I'm not a theologian, basically. But the thing is, we're all theologians. You think of that church father who said that a theologian is one who prays. There's this sense of the divine is open to everyone, and we shouldn't view it as other from ourselves. But then to highlight the role that this humble character is so close to Christ, or not even that's what he's doing already. But MacDonald also wants to warn us from false pride. So he has Malcolm look towards this text by Milton, and then he says, oh, there's a wee little bit of Latin in the footnote. And so he thinks, oh, I don't know Latin, but who would? The great Lord who owns this magnificent library. So then he brings the book to the Lord, and he says, can you make this out for me? And then the Lord says something like, I'm sorry, I haven't used my Latin in years. And then MacDonald writes in his as narrator that the Lord didn't really know Latin, basically. And so there's this honesty of Malcolm as this person who expects that with these external appearances there would be a corresponding depth.
Yes.
But there isn't always.
Yes.
And then we get this Lord who earns Malcolm's admiration, and it's far better that Malcolm admire someone falsely than be ungenerous to them wrongly. And so it's an amiable error on his part, but MacDonald as the narrator gets the final laugh at the end at this pretentious Lord, so to say. But that's beautiful. Sorry, that's a very roundabout way of saying, don't think that what you need to do needs to be this exalted thing. Do what you think you can do well that would share with others in a much less extravagant and long-winded phrase. You know what, I won't even look for the quote, but in Lilith, there's this wonderful passage where I think it is Adam asks the protagonist whether there's a lady in his house. Mm-hmm. And he says no. And then to which Adam corrects him.
Right.
Yeah, a housekeeper? And then he says, yes, I have a housekeeper. And then he says, but all housekeepers are ladies in the eyes of one whose liveries are multitudinous.
Yes.
Or something like that.
Yes.
And so, however humble your station may be, we are all regal in God's eyes, mm-hmm. which is something that he gets across in another way in one of the introductions to one of the issues of The Princess and the Goblin, where he basically says, every little girl is a princess.
Yes, so nice. So true.